Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. It is Wednesday interview day, and joining me today on the podcast is Matt Sanders, also known as M Shadows, frontman of the band Avenged Sevenfold, founder of the Deathbats Club, which is the tokenized fan club for Avenged Sevenfold. And most recently, y'all may have heard about Matt because Avenged Sevenfold and Deathbats Club played a big role in the most recent Ticketmaster launch, which allows fans or folks who have certain NFTs to log in with their NFT to Ticketmaster and reserve tickets early for concerts or events for bands they want to go to. It's kind of hard to talk about this. So one thing I'll say about this episode is there's a lot to unpack, and I don't know that we were always the most organized about how we unpacked it, but I think it's really worth the listen anyway, because what Matt has done and this Ticketmaster announcement is something that I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll look back on as an incredibly important or just meaningful step forward for NFT adoption. And this is not something where I think tomorrow everything is going to change and suddenly all bands are going to start issuing tickets as NFTs, or I should say giving early access to NFT holders and launching NFT programs. But I do think that this is frankly one of the most meaningful steps in the right direction that we've seen over the last 6 to 12 months in terms of fulfilling the bigger vision for this technology. So could not be more grateful to Matt, who is just always a blast to have on the show. He has actually been on the podcast before. He came on in February of 2022. I listened to that episode in preparation for this one, and I have to say it really holds up. So go back, and you might want to listen to that episode first. It's not required. You can still fully follow along with this conversation. But honestly, that conversation from February 2022 is still interesting, still relevant. And so it was kind of fun to go back and realize how much of what Matt talked about and was thinking about has really stood the test of time. And by time, I mean a year. But of course, in NFT time, that's 7 lifetimes. The second piece here, a little bit of admin-y stuff. I believe I said this on Friday's episode, but in case anybody has missed it there or on Twitter, the next guest for the Overpriced Happy Hour Tour is Daniel Allegre, the new Yuga CEO. This is going to be his first real sit-down podcast conversation since taking over as CEO for Yuga Labs. So I will be sitting down with him on April 28th in Austin, Texas, 6 p.m. This dovetails with Consensus, who has been very generous in providing us a venue and other things. So go get your Consensus tickets, folks. So we'll be sitting down with Daniel and chatting about all things Yuga, the past, the present, the future, his role, his transition from Activision Blizzard to Yuga. I think it's going to be a really awesome conversation. Those tickets are moving. So if you are interested, if you have an OPJ NFT or you have any Yuga assets, you can go to opjtour.com and reserve your seats through token proof for that. And of course, a huge shout out for our sponsors, OpenSea, Web3 Cents, who also sponsor this podcast. GALXE, sponsor of the pod, is sponsoring that event. Liquid Collections has been our partner throughout this. Token proof is helping to power everything. Really grateful for those partners. And all right, folks, with that, let's hear a word from our lovely sponsors and then get on to the show. Y'all know I think one of the most powerful use cases for NFTs are loyalty programs, which is why I'm so excited about our latest partner, GALXE. That's GALXE. GALXE is a leading platform for building a Web3 community. It is a no-code, plug-and-play solution to create task-based campaigns and loyalty programs. With over 67 million users, GALXE has worked with folks like Optimism, Polygon, Arbitrum, and more than 2,100 other partners with reward-based loyalty programs of their own. And I'm especially excited to announce their latest product offering, GALXE Mintlist. Mintlist enables NFT projects to issue allow lists based on different user profiles. It's free to use, and projects can then take advantage of GALXE's other offerings, like Task and Quest, which incentivize audience growth and user retention in the long term. Go beyond the mint and keep using GALXE's infrastructure to reward users through on and off-chain actions. GALXE's goal is to help projects grow in an authentic way and help them retain their users and communities over the long haul. And as a user, you can start contributing to your favorite Web3 communities today, joining allow lists through Mintlist and earning rewards, NFTs, oats, tokens, and points. Go to galaxy.com right now, that's GALXE.com right now, or click the link in the show notes to get started. Your Web3 community is waiting. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OpenSea. the world's leading NFT marketplace, built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OpenSea user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OpenSea, you use OpenSea, but did you know that OpenSea now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OpenSea. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OpenSea right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. So I would have just said this to folks in the intro, Matt, but I want to say this to you as well, which is I'm so excited to have you back. And I am especially excited, A, you're a great guest, but B, I just have so much respect for you because you were on the show and people should go listen to that episode a year and change ago. And we talked about all these different ideas you had for Deathbats Club. And now here we are a year and change later, and you've really executed on so many of them. And it's not just good for you and your holders, but it's pushing the space forward in really interesting ways, I think. And I want to get your take on all of it. I'm assuming you feel the same. So just thank you so much for being back here. Thanks for having me. You were one of the first people that would talk to me about this crazy Web3 space. And that was really exciting at the time. It was a time when a lot of fans were of the band were either annoyed with us because we weren't giving them the new music that they wanted, but there was a bunch of them that were also going along with this sort of journey of the Deathbats Club and sort of the vision of, getting that out of the way earlier so that the learning curve could be kind of leveled out by the time the record came out and we could start implementing things and kind of rewards in the fan club sort of sense. But we needed, a little bit of time to explain this world to all these new people that, had no clue what a wallet was or what, NFTs were. And so I'm glad we did it that way, but you were one of the first people to actually talk to me about that to get the information out to the fans. And I appreciate that. Gosh, well, no, I mean, I appreciate you. We're both still standing. It's good, Yeah. We've white knuckled our way through the last year and change, and here we are. You've always been innovating and pushing things forward. And let me just level set here for anybody who I don't know doesn't know, right? So you launched Deathbats Club was it the beginning of last year or was it end of 21? End of 21, I think. Yeah. End of 21, and you came on the show in February of 22. Actually, no, I'm sorry. No, we launched it, but we didn't actually launch the token. So I think my years are all messed up, but it's probably like 18 months ago now. Okay. And yeah, it was just always, you were always so authentically in this. You were always so clear. It was, this is so clearly never a cash grab for you. You love this tech. You've been in the tech for a while. And Deathbats Club is a tokenized fan club. And it was a way you were like, I want to have a place where all of our diehards can be, where we can be rewarding them regularly and giving them all sorts of perks and benefits. And there was a little bit of like, Gary Vee style stuff in there where you would get, a free guitar lesson, if you happen to get a token and that was the reveal, or you could play golf with the band, or I don't know, your fun rewards like that you did. But you always had this bigger vision of how it could tie into concerts, tour, like the things fans would want. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of context for Deathbats Club before I start asking you, like, where are we now with it all? Deathbats Club was always sort of seen as this connective tissue of being able to bring together many, many different use cases, right? And at that time, we didn't know what they were exactly. And we knew that we would have to get partners in the space, whether it was going to be streaming services or a record label or something like Ticketmaster or Shopify, right? Like any of these sort of things we wanted to do, we knew we were going to have some sort of onboarding of, bigger brands or legacy sort of institutions. Because at some point you have to make sure that everything is accountable and on chain and everything can be seen. And that was kind of the benefit of this whole thing. So early on, we just saw it as, let's get the token out there and then let's start
behind the scenes building with partners and kind of bringing an easier way for the fan to interact and also an easier way for us to kind of be able to oversee what's happening, right? So on our back end, it's very, very beneficial for us to be able to see these people as token holders and be able to know exactly what they're doing and what benefits they get instead of having all this data kind of sent at us from different places, right? Like, oh, let's go collect everything from Shopify and let's collect everything from Spotify and let's collect everything. If it's done in this Web3 sort of way, it makes it a lot more simple and it makes it a lot more beneficial. So we saw that early on, but we didn't really have the partners yet. We just had confidence that we could go out there and convince people that this was a cool path forward.
Yeah, you're starting to get us to what you're doing now, which is, again, this will be what we talk about primarily here because I think what you're doing is so cool. But just to take people back, you did a lot of education. I think you did it so smart, right? Which is, and again, it's sort of like what a Gary Vee has done or what I think some of the smarter, quote unquote, celebrities who have entered the space have done, right? Which is to have some immediate benefits that are easy for people to wrap their heads around. So you could have that initial enticement, like, hey, buy one of these things and maybe you can come hang out with the band, whatever. People are like, all right, I get that. That's simple. With this much bigger vision that takes a while to build out, like as the real thing long term that you were working towards. So I know there was a lot of, we go back and listen to the past podcast, anybody who really wants to understand everything you guys did, you did all these different test rounds and you did a lot of work to help onboard people into this space. And then you've now brought them on their journey over this last year. So what has been, how have you felt about this past year? Like, and how have people felt about Deathbats Club? And like, do you feel like there's a whole bunch of people who you onboarded into Web3 who now really are starting to really get it now in a way that they didn't previously? Like, what has been the feedback? And then that'll take us to exactly what you're doing today and the Ticketmaster partnership, et cetera.
Yeah, well, the first thing that we did that I think was super important was that we were not trying to get these tokens in the hands of the NFT flipper sort of mini casino, right? Like we were very upfront in the beginning that we were not going to do anything to try to pump the floor or to try to make your tokens more valuable based on these kind of short-term things. Like I remember we went through an era of like, comic books and we're going to airdrop you a partner and we're going to do all these things that people were doing. And I kind of look at it as, when we get into the ticketing, we can talk about it more, but it's like selling tickets to a concert and everybody's scalping the tickets, but there's no band. There's nothing to go see.
Yeah.
That's what Web3 was for a long time. And there was cool projects, right? And there's going to be cool things that come out of it. I have a lot of respect for a few different projects that I think could potentially do something. But the idea is that we already have a roadmap in terms of we know what fans want, right? It's like access, it's a community, but it's also like front row of tickets and we want music early and we want all these things because we do have a band. We are a brand, right? We know what they want. So how do we take this and kind of make it so that it makes their life better? And so one thing that we did, like I said, is we stayed away from people that aren't fans because what's the point, right? And I'd seen enough of the discords where everyone jumps in this new project and they go, this is the project. It's going to be so great. Pump it. And it was just like so cringy and like eye roll, like worthy that I was like, okay, we got to stay away from there. And then the idea was just to kind of educate people. We did it again with a thing called Ticket Pass, which we'll get into, which was then educate the people that missed out on the Deathbats Club, that we're trying to educate them on Web3 and NFTs can be anything you want them to be. They are not the Bored Ape that Bill Maher is going to show you and make fun of. They're not they're not, they are not necessarily what you're seeing all the time, right? They can be a financial statement. They can be a ticket to they can be a rewards benefit for Starbucks. They could be a bus ticket. They could be a concert ticket. They could be a piece of art. They could be all these different things. And that was the hardest part, was kind of getting people to understand that it's really an open kind of playing field. And we have seen a lot of people get into NFTs off of our project. And we've seen a lot of people go and get burned. And we've seen a lot of people that understand it. And we've seen a lot of people just say, hey, this is the only NFT I'm getting because I trust you guys. I want nothing to do with this space and yada, yada,
That's
yada.
Probably smart. Honestly, that person has done better than 99% of people in NFTs.
But I think that's where we get the, where the rubber meets the road, where it's like you get these you don't want people being in NFTs, right? Quote unquote. It's not, it makes no sense. It's like saying I'm into websites and I'm just gonna, I'm into websites and I'm gonna just buy websites and be involved in, like, no, like you go to Amazon because it has a product that you want, right? Like I don't want to go out to the store. I want my stuff to be sent to my house. So I'm going to use this website. Like I always talk about DoorDash too, or Postmates. I'm like, you can't be mad that the guy next door gets food delivered to his house if you're not willing to download the app. But just because you're downloading the app doesn't make you a tech bro. It makes you want something that I want food brought to my house too. So it's like the way of thinking about all these things is you have to have some sort of benefit to having these things, and it has to have some use case, and it has to be better than what came before it. And so that's what people should be thinking about.
And I think more people than previously know that now, but you were so early to not just understanding that, but staying true to it. Because I think there's plenty of people who really understood it at the beginning of last year, but still got caught up with or launched projects to feed off of the feeding frenzy, right? And I just admire how much you guys have stayed true to the original vision. And of course, I think a lot of that is paying off. Okay, so let's talk about what you did most recently. And you know, it was kind of splashy, and I know plenty of my audience is probably aware of it, and I retweeted it because it's really exciting. And this gets us into TicketPass. But you have this partnership with Ticketmaster now, where holders of Deathbats Club or folks who use this TicketPass program, which is another NFT piece that we'll talk about, put simply, and correct me if anything about this is not comprehensive enough, but like can get early access to reserve the tickets they want. So they're not fighting with the masses and the scalpers and the bots and the et cetera on Ticketmaster to get tickets. So for your guys' upcoming shows, you said, great, if you have a Deathbats Club NFT, or if you're in this TicketPass program, sign in with your wallet early and pick, you know, the area of seats you want, and you'll be able to get them no problem without having to fight everybody else. Is that a good summary?
Sure. And, you know, one thing I would say is it's not a partnership with Ticketmaster.
Okay.
We would work with any ticketing company that wants to implement this, right? But they need to be able to read our token, and they need to be able to have a secure way, like sort of digital handshake on the back end, to where we can make sure this is secure and done, you know, in the right way. So Ticketmaster just happens to be the ones, you know, with Michael Rapino and with David Marcus, who's head of global Ticketmaster. They are the ones that after talking to them, they understood that this was important and that they had a band that was willing to go all the way through with this, with a fan base big enough that it was going to be able to try this thing out, right? Ticketmaster doesn't like the sort of situation they're in right now. And there's so much nuance and things that people don't understand about ticketing that, and I've even learned a lot in this last year, right? I've gone in there and I'm like sitting with them and trying to understand every single aspect of what's going on there. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to a lot of supply and demand, right? You got someone rolling into a market. There's more people that want to see them than can see them. And so you have this sort of situation where we can get into the details of that. But what we're saying is that we would work with any ticketing company that is willing to implement our sort of blockchain standard, right? And to get these tickets to people earlier. Now, I'll let you ask the questions because there are a lot of different areas here to go into, but I just wanted to clear that up, that they were the first ones. They are the ones most interested to finding a solution, and they're the ones that came to us. They are the biggest, you know, ticket agency in America, so it makes sense. And we do a lot of shows with Live Nation. So it was awesome that they came on. But, you know, when we go to South America or we go to Europe or Southeast Asia, it's not necessarily Ticketmaster. And we would love to implement this for our holders around the world. But right now, it's very fractured and it's unproven technology in their eyes. So we don't know what's going to happen.
Got it. That's helpful clarification. So is it fair to say that this is now a Ticketmaster product that came about because you all pushed for it and said, we'll be basically your first guinea pig case? This is really like a thing that Ticketmaster has initiated, part at your behest and part because you were willing to go through it. But obviously, yes, but you want to see all ticketing companies do this, et cetera. Like, that's even more exciting to me, right? Like the idea that this is a Ticketmaster quote unquote product. Would you phrase it like that? This is a Ticketmaster offering?
It's interesting. It is now. Yes. So I was speaking at NFT LA probably a year ago, like the one that was not this year, but the year before that. And David Marcus came out and saw it, and we went to lunch afterwards. And I just said, this is how I see it, right? The same conversation I would have had with him about Spotify or with Spotify or any of these people that I thought we could reward the fans more. And he said that they had a Web3 team that they were putting together, and they were looking at ways to do this sort of thing. Not exactly what we were talking about, but something like it. And he was talking about the problems of actually doing NFT tickets, and actually when the blockchain goes down, or being at a show and there's 50,000 people and the internet's not working, or a chain goes down, like things that were issues that they couldn't overcome right now with the scalability. And so after talking to him for a few months, I said, well, what if we token gate on our side? So you go to our website and we token gate to make sure you have the token, and then you can buy tickets the same way you used to buy tickets. So this idea sort of came out of like, let's not meet people, let's not tell them we're going to play the form, but you got to download MetaMask and you got to buy your NFT ticket. Let's tell them, if you have the NFT, you can buy the ticket on your own time, but it's not an NFT ticket. You're still buying the ticket in the same way you're used to with your credit card once you get into Ticketmaster, but the token gate happens before, right? So it's kind of meeting people where they're at a little more instead of making them jump, off the ledge. And so once this idea came up, they said, well, actually, we want to token gate on our side. It'll be easier for the user flow. If they're buying a ticket and MetaMask just pops up and just authenticates your ticket. And it was like, aha, perfect. So they were serious, right? They're like, we seriously want to make this the best. So it was many months of having conversations of user flow, what's easiest for the fan, what's best for the fan, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a 50-50 why this happened, but I would say that this is something that I told David. I said, I want more artists to get involved. I want more artists to be able to use this. And now they have that for any artist that has a token. You can literally plug right into Ticketmaster. Has nothing to do with us, but it's on them at that point. And their team is really, really good. Like they've really gone above and beyond. And they're very helpful, and they're also very knowledgeable. So these aren't, this isn't like a joke team. Like they really know what's up, which is great.
And it sounds like well, let me ask you that. Oh gosh, there's so many questions, Matt.
I know. It's so hard to unpack it all. I know.
And it's so exciting because I think it's so exciting. Like, okay, my sense is that, and I want to dig more in the weeds about everything you just said around why it's hard. Why is this complicated? Like, I want to walk people through that. And frankly, I want to understand it better. But I want to see if the upshot here is Ticketmaster is really serious about this, and blockchain does have as much potential as we all thought, with lots of issues that still need to be resolved or whatever, to be the future for ticketing. Do you feel like that's true?
Yeah. So
ish.
If we want to go down the line of it's a great place for people to become extremely creative with how they're going to use it, right? Like the way we're using it isn't necessarily going to be the right path for everybody, but Ticketmaster has the tools, or will build the tools for you to do it however you want to do it. And a lot of it is on our end, right? So let me give you a quick example. So a lot of people say, well, why don't the scalpers just buy your tokens, right? Well, some did, and we caught them. We could see what they were doing with their IP addresses. We could see they were buying at multiple shows around the country. And we just cut off their token. We just let them have the tickets. So there's all these things that you can do when you're looking at it on that side of it. And we also, once we get into Ticketmaster, I'm like stuttering here because I don't want to like talk about too many things that we haven't brought up yet.
Should we level set here? Have I failed us as a moderator? Like, should we go back to basics in a certain way?
I don't think you've failed us. I think it's so nuanced and complicated that there's a bunch of answers for specific questions that may have not been asked yet, if that makes sense, right?
Feel free to jump the gun on the questions. If you want to just like start talking and explain it as it makes sense for you, if that's easier, go for it.
Okay, well, so with Deathbats Club, we have, let's call it 5,400 unique wallets, right? Out of 10,000 tokens. So you got to think you've got 5,400 people that are trying to get tickets around the world, which is going to be such a small number. If you put 40 dates on sale, right? And what is the number that's actually living in that particular city? Say it's Montreal or New Jersey or whatever, out of 5,400 people. It's really not a lot, right? You might get anything from 13 tickets bought to 200 or 300 tickets bought, right? So not a crazy number. One thing that David challenged me on was, how do you go wider? How do you get more people involved? And that's where I came up with a thing called Ticket Pass, where it was a free token dropped to anybody that wanted one, right? All you had to do was opt in, and then you would get access to those early tickets. But over time, we use NFC tags, we use Spotify, we use POAPs. All these things in your wallet start accumulating toward tiered Ticket Pass, right? So we can follow the biggest fans and they get tickets earlier. Now, to me, that weeds out the scalpers and the sort of bad actors, because they're not going to be out there buying all our vinyl, listening to our music all day, doing all these sorts of things. It's almost like a reward system, almost like an American Airlines reward system, frequent flyer miles for fans. And I don't think anyone's done that yet. So that's, to go back, that's our particular way of how we're going to engage with our fan base. But that doesn't mean that everyone has to. There could be other ways where they're looking at the tokens individually and making sure that they're not being resold. You can do that, right? You can see, oh, this person bought tickets to every one of our shows and they instantly put them on resale, right? They instantly try to do that. So you can almost flag them and say, well, that's somebody that we don't want getting early tickets anymore, and you can turn off their token, right? So there's so many different things you could use this for that I wouldn't want to say, well, this is how it has to be done. But I do know that Ticketmaster continually builds tools for promoters, for venues, for artists, for whatever it is, to kind of shape however they want their ticket buying experience to go to. Now, when you run up to something like a Taylor Swift show or something like, something that our weekend show, that just simply comes down to supply and demand. There are more people that want to go to the show than there are seats, right? And so you're always going to have the person that doesn't get tickets. They want tickets to be locked down and you can't resell them for more. And the people that do have tickets, they go, well, that's kind of messed up. You don't do that with my house. You don't do that with any other product. You don't do that with baseball. You don't do it with any other product. Now you're going to tell me I can't resell my ticket and it's worth 10x. So you have this sort of rub where people don't quite understand it. And if what other side they're on of it, they've got very harsh opinions on it. And we can get into the nuances of that. But for me, we're just using the blockchain in a way that I think makes sense for our fans, but I think it can be done in other ways.
Yes. Okay. I love this. So there's two pieces here that I just want to close the loop on one thing, which is what I was trying to get at earlier, maybe with the, like the Ticketmaster is taking this serious thing, is I think this has been a year in which we've seen a lot of big companies start doing things in NFTs and then back out. Instagram being an example. And look, I think Instagram will end up back in NFTs, like, of course, right? But the reality is in the short term, they entered, seemed like they were doing cool things, seemed like they were committed to it. And then, they kind of GTFO'd. Disney, similar thing. And again, they'll be back in it. I actually think they're probably restructuring and will do it even better, but whatever. Like they were into this stuff and then they sort of backed out of it. So it doesn't sound, based on everything you're saying, like that this is like experimental for Ticketmaster in the sense that they're like, we're going to dip our toe in, but we may scrap this altogether. Or is it like, to what level is this like, yes, there's lots of different ways to utilize this and different artists will use it in different ways, but like, there's no turning back and Ticketmaster is in, versus is it like, well, we've tried this thing, but maybe we'll scrap this program in 6 months because budget cuts?
I can't imagine them taking this away from us, right? Mm-hmm. We've got a good relationship with that team. We're talking to the highest people there, but it's going to come down to the artists. If no other artists implement it, I mean, what's going to happen, right? Like you got this whole Web3 team sitting around for Avenged Sevenfold dates to go on tour. You know what I mean? Like people need to, see what happens. And I will say this, there was 7 or 8 different artists that were talking to me constantly about getting in this space. And then I didn't hear about them from a while. I didn't hear from them for a while. And then I hit them up with the Ticketmaster news and said, this is great for you guys. And they said, we've not doing that anymore. So they're gone, right? But a lot of it is, if you're gone from here, then you never saw the vision anyways. It was always about money, right? I don't know how you could look at that technology, understand it, and then just be like, oh, well, Bored Apes aren't worth what they used to be, and there's a lot of bad press,
and
so we're
this guy, out. Sam Bankman-Fried was an asshole, so I'm done. Yeah.
Well, and that's just a 100% purely misunderstanding if you have your stuff on a centralized exchange, you don't have anything. And that, like, if you don't understand that difference, then to use that guy as like an example of what blockchain and what crypto is, then you've completely don't understand any of this, right? But it's very easy to go put that on the, the news, and my mom sees it and she thinks, oh, why'd you have me buy Bitcoin? like, look at this, look what happened. You can hack this stuff. And it's like, it's like one level deeper than what most people think about it. And so anyways, those are all things that like, they've never fazed me. Cause I just, there's always, anyways, I don't know. I think these bands got in it because they saw there was money to be made there. And I don't like hate them for that. I don't hold it against them, but I think it's a little weak because there are so many cool things now that our fans, I hope, are going to run around and go like, look how easily I got these tickets. I didn't have to sit in a queue. I didn't have to like fight the guy for the seat next to me, which is what happens when these things go on sale. And that's really what, if we want to get into dynamic pricing and what the queues are for and this and that, I learned a lot this last year, and I'm happy to share that information because I actually, when you talk to Ticketmaster, it's not egregious. They're just making business decisions that like anybody would make if they owned that company.
Anytime you dig into anything, you find out like most people are like, well, maybe this isn't fair to say, but like most people are good, just like trying to do their thing, like trying to live their lives. And from the outside, it's so easy to judge or hate on anything. But you get under the hood and you're like, oh, it's actually just kind of complicated and hard and everyone's trying their best.
100%. And then, or they'll hear one answer and then they'll say, but what about this? And they just keep jumping around to like, and it's like, okay, but that's a different thing. Let's talk about that. But no one wants to actually get in a conversation about the weeds of what all this is. One thing I could dispel right now is people think that dynamic pricing is like an algorithm that's being done by a computer. And it's just like, if there's a lot of, action and people are trying to buy a lot of tickets, the price raises. Well, actually what Ticketmaster did is they actually, and there'll be an answer to this, which is like, well, a lot of times Live Nation is the promoter, right? But what they did is they built tools for the promoter to look at the queue before tickets go on sale. And if the queue is above a certain threshold that they think is above, the amount of people that are coming, they'll raise the price a little bit. Now the artist has to opt into this. So they'll raise the price because they know there's more people than they thought that's going to sell this thing out instantly. If you look at that from the artist perspective or anyone's perspective, you'd go, oh, I get it. Okay. There's way more, there's way less supply. There's way too much demand. But they didn't make an algorithm that just does that. It's opted in by the artist. The promoter's sitting at the show and they're looking and they're putting the price up based on, the amount of people in the queue. So these are things that like people, like I always thought it was like some, program that was just like, okay, there are lots of people buying, go. It's not the case at all. Now, some promoters will do it less egregiously. They don't want to do it in the middle of a sale. They want to do it in between those lulls, right? So it doesn't look like you just bought a ticket next to me and I paid $200 more than you. But you'll get those instances where people put it all over online and then that's what goes viral. But the main point is artists opt into that sort of thing. And there's a reason they do, which is another argument you could have, which is if someone's going to make that money, the market will always dictate the value. I was looking at SZA tickets yesterday. Shows sold out instantly. 55% were on the resale market. 55%. And to say that those aren't fans isn't necessarily true. They just happen to get the tickets and they can make 10x on their ticket. They're probably going to do it. Right. And then again, to take away their fundamental right to resell something that they bought also seems kind of weird. So there's so many like things where the artist really does have control, and Ticketmaster is kind of just trying to build tools for the artist to make the decision. But they take
your point there is like surge pricing during the primary sale, call it, makes sense because the artist knows they're going to get their cut, whatever, versus if you don't surge price during the primary sale and the demand is so much higher than the supply, inevitably then you've mispriced the original ticket and you're going to have secondary activity because that's how this works, right? That's how supply demand works. And now in that secondary sale, you're not getting the same cuts as the artist and as the venue and also whatever else. Is that right? Is that part of why an artist would want to opt in on the primary and say
100%, like, yeah. So like the guy that resells the ticket might get $1,000 for a $200 ticket and you got none of that. Where if there was a huge queue and there's gonna be a bunch of people there, you might sell your ticket for $700 or $800 and you get all the money. right? So you and the promoter get that money instead of the random person that bought your ticket that decided they were going to sell it. Now, there's emotion there. There's all sorts of people don't like that, right? But this comes down to some of these mega artists that are, so for instance, like for us, we play venues that are so big that we're not going to blow them out, right? There's like, we can either go from a 4,000, 5,000 cap room, and then it jumps up to arenas and amphitheaters, right? So if you put us in 4,000 or 5,000, it's going to blow out and you're going to have that major problem. If you put us in an amphitheater that holds 40,000, it probably won't sell out and it might get 15, 20,000 by the day the show happens. But what will sell out is the pit and all those like nice seats right around it, right? And the point of Ticket Pass and Deathbats Club is to make sure that our fans get those seats if they want them before the bum rush, right? And then all of a sudden the pit, like, so I'm looking at the Forum. The front row at the Forum right now is between $600 and $1,000 on pre-sale. Mm-hmm. Our tickets were $100 that we sold, right? So someone else is making 8X, 7X on our tickets and we can't do anything about it, right? And those are, and that's not saying the venue's blown out. Like that show particular did sell out, but it's not blown out like a SZA tour or a Weekend tour. But you see it at a smaller scale and it happens at every sort of like size, right? And so I think the main point of all this is that you can use NFTs and Web3 in any sort of way based on the size of your band, what you want to do. Is it a reward system? Is it something that you want to go fully in? Or is it just something that, hey, we're going to sell NFT tickets and we're going to give you a digital collectible because we can see that you bought the ticket and scanned it, right? We're doing all that, but it could be used for artists any way that they see fit, which is why I think Web3 is actually such a creative tool, right? It allows you to be super creative with what you're building. It doesn't need to be exactly what Avenged Sevenfold did.
So, and let me just explain, I know you started to get into it at the top and you kind of explained this a bit, but let me just reiterate it for folks. So there's a couple things happening here, what you guys have done. So you first and foremost have the Deathbats Club, which we've talked about quite a bit. And that's always going to be priority number one, yes, folks. And so moving forward, you have a tour and Deathbats Club will have the very first shot at logging into this platform. It's token gated through Ticketmaster itself. It's not through your web front end. You were describing that back and forth. Yes. And ultimately where it's landed is that it's actually a Ticketmaster offering. So you go onto a Ticketmaster page, you have the Deathbats Club, you have the first access to get in and choose the seats you want to choose. And I don't think you're picking individual seats. You're picking like areas, if I'm not mistaken. So
you're never going to get that threshold on the queue, right? So the promoter's never going to look at that and go, let's raise prices right now. So that's why we've been saying, stay away from dynamic pricing with this. You're going to get in before any of that stuff happens because obviously there might be 100 people at max, right, in any particular.
Okay. Yeah. That's what you were saying earlier. You're saying there's only 5,400 people who have these Deathbat tokens. And yes, out of those 5,400, the number of people who are in any one particular city where you're performing is just never going to be that high, which yes, means the promoter on the back end of this that you were describing earlier, and I guess that's with Live Nation or whatever, we don't have to worry about that right now, but this promoter figure, this shadowy promoter who's raising the prices on the innocent consumer, right? There's never going to be a blowout. He's never going to get triggered, right, to raise prices because it's never going to be that many people. Okay, great. So if you're coming in as a Deathbats Club member that you aren't going to have to contend with dynamic pricing and you're not going to have to fight 10,000 other people for a seat and for a whatever. So that's step one. The second thing that you described is this thing called Ticket Pass, which, as you said, was sort of for folks who maybe missed Deathbats Club, but who want to get into this ecosystem and just a way to reward actual fans and give actual fans tickets. So that, in my understanding of this hierarchy, you've got Deathbats Club number one, and then you've got any of your Ticket Pass holders become the second tier priority. And very similar dynamic. They have an NFT. It's not a Deathbats Club NFT, right? It's more generic, whatever. And they use that to get in and to select their tickets before the crazy masses get in and dynamic pricing happens and whatever. Now, the other piece you said that I just want to make sure people are clear on is, so for right now, it's basically those two tiers. But what you're doing is you're implementing the system where if you buy merchandise, that merchandise will have an NFC tag in it that you can tag that validates that you bought merch. If you have attended concerts in the past, You'll have gotten POAPs or other identifying pieces of information, blockchain-based things that you can identify and say, hey, this person's been to a concert. If you stream it on Spotify, and I want to talk about this, I think I've heard you say like you're going to be tracking streams on Spotify. So if you've streamed a lot on Spotify, you guys will know this. And all of these things, all of these fan behaviors, buying merch, listening on Spotify, going to concerts, etc., will get factored into this. Score is not the right word, but essentially like an ultimate score that will also then tier you within that ticket pass system. So if you've listened to a bunch on Spotify, if you've gone to a bunch of concerts, if you bought a bunch of merch, you may end up in tier 1 of ticket pass. So it'll be Deathbats Club, then those tier 1 ticket pass holders, and then tier 2 and tier 3, on and on and on, based on what you've done as a fan. And that's how you feel like it's avoiding scalpers, because you're like, well, the scalper then would have to be like, streaming me on Spotify, streaming us on Spotify over and over again, and buying our merch, like doing all these additional things that start to like reduce the ROI for them on this, because they've now invested a lot of time and money up front. And if they want to do all that, like, okay, I guess, congratulations. So that's what you're describing in all of this, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So you just nailed it. You get it better than most people that I explain it to. Yeah. Yeah. So that's exactly what we're describing. And the other part is, we can see a lot of what's happening with each individual pass, right? Like if there's some, like I said, last ticket thing, we got a note from Ticketmaster, said, hey, this guy bought, max amount of tickets, which we limited to 4 in every venue or most venues. And we can see they're using 8 different Ticketmaster accounts running through the Deathbat token that they're sending around, doing all these things, right? And so I go, well, give me his address, like for the Deathbats Club. So I look at the Deathbats Club. It was bought 2 days ago, right? So, okay, that's already okay. So then I go through his wallet and I start going through his stuff, and I see that it's just a total NFT flipper, right? Like they're in every project flipping things, and I go and I start looking through all their eScan, going through, and it's obvious that this person makes a living off of flipping things. So I just told them, just tell him he didn't get the tickets. And so we turned it all off. Like, I just know what he's doing with our tickets, and that's not a fan. There's nothing about him in any of his profiles or socials that is Avenged Sevenfold anything. And so we just turned it off. So there is some sort of control there, and some people might look at that as a negative. But to me, I look at it as that's our brand, and we're trying to protect people from that sort of thing. So yeah, we turned off his token.
Where my head goes is that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work you had to put in. Like, like you're having to manually go and check their behavior, and that's something you're like.
Their instinct was just to turn it off. They knew right off the bat, but the curious guy in me was like, let me just see, maybe he is a fan, right? And then I basically came to the same conclusion they came to, which was there's 8 different Ticketmaster accounts. This is all coming from the same IP. It's obvious that this is something happening. They would have just turned them off, but I love that they reached out to me and said, are you cool with us turning this token off?
Yeah. I work with a team called Web3 Cents, who's a partner on the show. Shout out Web3 Cents, a sponsor. And they run analytics to determine like percent flippers, percent holders, percent believers across different NFT communities. Like that shouldn't be a hard thing to at some point automate, is to just have an algorithm that can go check the behavior of a wallet. Now, you start to get risk there of like false positives or something, right? Like where somebody maybe has flipped a lot, but they're a fan. But by and large, right? Like that's something that you could start automating too, is just see what is the usual behavior of this wallet, and and then like.
I that's the first I've heard of it, and I'm gonna let them know, right? Like, if this gets rolled out to bigger artists and more things, then they're going to need something like that.
Yeah.
But again, it's all automated, and that sounds great. And by the way, like what we did wrong on this one is, and it wasn't necessarily, we knew that this could be a problem, but because of the way that you do, where you get a section and not the actual seat. And the reason they do that is because they're trying to relieve the fan of the pure anxiety rush of I have to be there first in the queue. Right. So they're saying you got 24 hours and just pick the section you want, and we will figure it out later for you. We'll give you the best seats possible. Now, some fans might not want that. They might want to just wait in the queue at 6 a.m. and like just fight it out. But a lot of people found it to be really nice, like just to pick a section. But what we need to do next time is leave a grace period the next day, so that if a credit card gets declined or if something happens that they don't like, we have one day to figure it out. And what happened with us this time is the next day, the Spotify presale went, and like our other fan club presale went, and people had anxiety because they hadn't been given their tickets yet.
The original Deathbats holders hadn't gotten their tickets yet. There was no period of time between one and the other. Got it.
Yes. And so the Deathbats club holders, they were guaranteed tickets unless their credit card declined. And of course we had like 12 instances out of like 3,000 or whatever it was that did get declined. And then at that point, they're kind of screwed because they can't update their information. I think if we left a grace period in between, then they could update their information and then they can get their tickets still. So anyways, those are little things that we learned, right? That like, okay, like we need to have a little bit of grace period with this thing so that people feel comfortable with it. But all in all, it was awesome.
Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3 Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3 Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3 Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3 Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. And how do the fans feel, again, knowing that you have a fan base, some of whom really aren't like NFT people who got in specifically for you? What has been the feedback? I guess I'm curious both from Ticketmaster, though it sounds like it's still it's very positive there, and then from the fans, and how well do they really understand the totality of this program?
Yeah, I think some understand it much better than others. I think you're always going to get the few cases where it didn't work out, right? Where there's user error, especially when it's something new. I did make videos. We walked people through it. Discord was incredible. We had so many people in the community that were helping. We even gave ticket pass holders like their own role in Discord, and we're going to do a bunch of things for them, which are kind of fun. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, the way the world works, you get a couple things that didn't go right. A credit card gets declined or whatever, then they're the first ones to go tweet, but I think overall people realize that it was a really successful run at this. There's things that we can improve on. And at the end of the day, you're always going to have user error. What I didn't like about it though, was I didn't like our community becoming the ticket board or the Ticketmaster sounding board. Like, why didn't I get an email here? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't they promise me this? And it's like, well, we're not Ticketmaster, right? Like, there is an issue where you need to go to Ticketmaster and not us. But I think when you take a step into this world, you are going to have people that are looking to you for the answers of things that we can't answer.
The newness of this is part of that too. Like, they're just going to come to you. Okay. And then I want to talk about, because I love, I talk on the show a lot about NFTs as an extension of fan experiences, and that as like a no-brainer, right? You go to the show, you get the merch that has the NFC tag that takes you to exclusive content from that show, whatever, right? And so you're doing that on steroids here with what you're doing with TicketPass. Nick, who's privately on the line on your PR side, and I were talking about this yesterday. So all these things you're describing, if you buy merch, if you stream on Spotify, if you go to past shows, all accruing and being weighted as part of your ultimate score as to whether your Ticket Pass tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Is that is it a dynamic NFT? Is that Ticket Pass NFT dynamic in the sense that it's one NFT is holding all of those values and all that score, or are you like accruing additional NFTs in your wallet with your Ticket Pass that are contributing to that?
Yeah, so the way that like Verify works, which is the company we're using with the NFCs.
And that's Verify with a B, as in the animal Verify, outside.
Yeah. And so the way that they work is that you can scan the NFC and then you can have that experience, right? Whatever experience you want, but then you can also claim a token, and it's on Polygon. So it would be an actual claim of that token, which will go in the wallet, which we've built the Ticket Pass in a way to where, or at least Bitflip's built their backend to where they can see what tokens you're, acquiring. And then at a certain amount of time, so one thing that they're figuring out right now, and we're going to, work with the community on this. Do you burn those tokens into your Ticket Pass and then the Ticket Pass upgrades? Is it something that we lock in place so that you can't upgrade your ticket pass and then sell your tokens, right? So they're working out the mechanics of exactly how they think it should work. And then we were very clear with everyone. That's why it says beta on it, because, BitFlips on their end, they're serious dudes, right? They're serious tech guys, and they don't want to put anything out that can potentially look bad or be done wrong the first time. So they said, Matt, if we do this, we don't have all the answers right now. Like things like that, right? Like, where do we take these, like all these verified tokens, and how do we make sure that people can't resell them? How do we group them up and put them into this ticket pass thing? And how do we upgrade it? Should people be able to sell their upgraded ticket pass? Is that cool or is that not cool? Right? So all these questions that we're taking one step at a time, and we have a good thesis on what we should do, but we're also open to, if the fan experience isn't correct, right? We want to rectify that. We've left the coding is open enough to where we can kind of do whatever we want at this point, which I think is smart by them. And that's why we keep saying it's a beta. But cool. Yeah, there will be individual tokens that you're getting, right? So you go to the show, we're going to airdrop you a token. You scan your merch, you're going to have to download the NFT. You get your vinyl, you're going to have to scan it, you get the NFT, right? So you're going to get something separate on top of it.
Yep. Okay. And then the Spotify piece is fascinating to me, and I'm sure that's still in early phases, but I'm curious to hear, right? Like this idea that you're going to track Spotify listens, and that'll be part of what gets calculated in your final score. And so presumably you're getting a token around that. Like how is that working?
So Carly, I speak things into the universe before they're ever going to happen. So, here's how I see it. Spotify, okay, the Web 2 listening experience right now is very good. Nobody that's a listener has a problem with going anywhere they want and listening to any song they want at any moment. It's a very good experience. So how do you make it better? And to me, they should want to reward the fans that listen to any particular artist. So I have a call with them coming up. And even if that call goes bad, right, I'm going to explain to them that we want to reward our fans. Why wouldn't you want us to be able to reward our fans? All we need from you is to communicate with these fans that if they download a wallet, that we can airdrop them a appreciation token, which will play into Ticket Pass, right? Like you're one of our top listeners. And you see it every year on Instagram. People love to brag about this stuff. They love to put up, like, I was in your top.
My Spotify Wrapped, baby. Yeah.
100%. So if you go to, and so the reason I'm going to attack Spotify first is because they are doing the token gated sort of, playlist and stuff. And there is a head of innovation there that's going to talk to them. Now, if that doesn't work and they say, we don't want you to have our information, we don't want to be involved in that, then we will individually go to our fans that are sending us wraps. And we'll say, if you send us this proof of this with your email, KYC, and your wallet, we will send you a token. So we have a backup plan, but I think that we can do it in a really smooth way where we just get a airdrop to us all the addresses that are our top listeners, and boom, we send out a token, and now you've upgraded your ticket pass. That's what I think should happen. And because of our ability to convince people in the past that it's good for them, that I think we can do it.
Yeah. I mean, that really, again, like that, the cohesiveness, if you have Ticketmaster on board, if you have Spotify on board, you were talking about this earlier, like things are over here on Shopify, things are over here, like that everything is so dispersed right now. And if you as Avenged Sevenfold can be the one to create a way for all of these systems to be pulled at least a little bit together, where everybody's kind of playing ball, at least enough where you can start to really track and reward these things. Like, this circles us back to, you're like, there are these 8 artists who I pinged when we did this thing with Ticketmaster, and they all said, oh, we're not doing it anymore. Like, other artists will probably do this, right? Or are you like, God, it is so much work, Carly? Like, it really, the tech just still isn't really there for a lot of other artists to make this effort.
Our team, BitFlips, has made this stuff in a way that they could literally roll it out to every artist. And you wouldn't even have to know what Web3 is to be able to run it the way they put the back end out. Put on a perk, do this, do that, like all instantly done in this back end. That's just like, it's just waiting to get used. So
say more on that. So this back end that could be used across, you're saying like it would be used across all, it's like a perk shop essentially. Like you use across like Spotify and Shopify, like all the different and Ticketmaster, and like explain a little bit more like what that back end is.
So the back end is basically every single thing we've built. our team has basically made it the total NFTs for idiots sort of back end, right?
Okay.
Where all they would have to do at a certain point is if you were, say you're a band XYZ and you want to be involved in this, all Bitflips would do is make you a token, whatever kind of token you wanted, right? You could make it an NFT collection. You could just make it simply a way to communicate with, the Spotifys of the world. And basically, then he would hand it over after the token's out, and he would hand it over to your social media team or your whatever team, and you would have control over every token. You would have control over redeeming perks. You could even write in what benefits you want and what tokens turn on or off, and people can redeem stuff for physicals. They could send the thing with Ticketmaster really takes nothing because that's on Ticketmaster's end. They do all that work, right? They just take your token and they test it a little bit and they go, okay, your token's allowed, right? And I don't know how else to explain it other than they've made it very, in such the UI, the UX, it's so nice that you wouldn't even know you're dealing with Web3.
So by back end, what you're really describing is like the admin console that you as Avenged Sevenfold are looking at. And so you have a token and now you go onto your admin console and it's like, hey, here's your, Ticket Pass token or your Avenged, whatever, your Deathbats Club token. And you are just going, okay, turn on Spotify points, turn on Ticketmaster integration, and for each of the individual tokens, you can individually control that to say, hey, this token, we just discovered this token with whatever. Well, I guess you're saying Ticketmaster would be handling that. That's not on the flip side. Ticketmaster would turn off the token once they've decided that it's like a flipper or it's got bad intentions or something. So and so all the different benefits for that token can be turned on and off. And then
or like we're having a party. Yeah. And we're having a party, turn on redemptions for all tokens, or there's meet and greets, turn on Ghost, and now you can redeem, and we get a list and it's sent to our tour manager. It says, these are the people coming in today and they're on the guest list already, right? It's like all done autonomously. And Joe and Bitflip's team, they said, we're not going to build anything that can be done without NFTs. We want everything to be so we can wipe people out and just have everything be autonomous.
I guess when I think about this as being complicated for other artists, it's more MetaMask. It's more, I have, for me, I'm like, I feel like this tech has gotten less user-friendly for me not that I have, frankly, I don't have that many valuable NFTs, right? But things are now in my Ledger wallet because I'm afraid, I want it to be safe. And then I realized, oh shoot, I'm trying to do this thing, but I'd moved that one POAP that I'd gotten to my Ledger and not this other one that I had gotten. So it feels like that is where things are still messy. And that's like just a Web3, that's like a decentralization reality. Yeah. So I guess maybe the bigger question here is just back to this optimism thing or lack thereof. Like when you joke, you're like, hey, like Ticketmaster seems serious about it, but if they have an entire team that's just servicing Avenged Sevenfold, it's probably not going to go to many places. Like, how are you feeling in terms of your optimism about other artists adopting this and in what time frame? Because conceptually it's such a no-brainer, but you're now in the realities of it, which was like, it's a lot. It's messy. You all have put in so much work. I know, because you were putting in so much work 13 months ago when we spoke. And, you're talking about having people individually send you Spotify wrapped images and verifying it. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, no, it is. But those are the things you have to do when you're bridging the gap, right? Like, I feel like there is a lot of legwork that we've done and we would continue to do to make sure that we can build out a proof of concept for some of these companies. Like my biggest argument to them would literally be, you can't make the Web 2 listening experience any better. Why not reward these people for listening? It's the only thing they don't have, right? And so to me, Web 3 can be a good asset to that. But in terms of other artists getting in, I think it's gonna probably start with EDM, right? It's gonna start with the artists that are and the fan base that's already been on the front edge of this. When I am talking to artists, it's usually, it's the Chainsmokers or it's Marshmello or it's, Steve Aoki, and they're people that they're intuitively already starting this sort of process of experimenting with these things.
Right. But
I also think it's our fan base going and demanding and to keep annoying people and saying, well, why don't you do this? Like Avenged did, this is a better experience. Right. And at some point it's going to take somebody, the balls or the sort of, this sort of like, we're going to take a step into this. And it gets so complicated because a band might want to do it and a manager sitting there going, it's not worth it yet. It's not worth taking the risk. If this thing falls on Avenged's head, it's going to be egg on their face, which I don't really care about egg on my face. I just believe in creating and trying things. Doesn't bother me, but a lot of people have an ego about that, right? They don't want to be wrong, and they don't want to, if they don't fully understand something, they don't want to take a step in. So I don't know where it goes from here. All I know is that we can try and be the best example of it as possible. Right. And then hopefully people go, oh, that's a better way than what we're doing already.
Have you talked to the Chainsmokers about it?
I talked to those guys a lot. They're actually, Matt.
It would seem like they should consider something like this.
I haven't talked to them about this exactly, but they know exactly what we're doing because they're doing a lot of investments and things.
They were on Bankless. Yeah.
And Matt, the drummer is actually very much the one that got us into Verify. It's a company that he's involved in, right? So we are working with them in certain ways, but the difference between what we're doing with Ticketmaster and what a lot of people are doing is a lot of people are doing this as an investment, and they're trying to figure out what the program is to not only make a lot of money. And I'm not saying that's what the Chainsmokers are doing, but they're investing in startups and companies and this idea. What we're doing is different. We are building tools. We are not taking money from anybody, and people have been trying to give us money to build out these sort of things. We're not patenting anything. We're not copywriting anything. We are literally building tools that we think will be better for the artist and for the fan, and we want everybody to use them. Now, if you came and said, can you help us with our token? I would send you to Bitflips, right? And at that point, they would make a percentage on the token they make you, and then there'd probably be a subscription to use their back end. But we're not trying to build some money-making scheme here. We're really trying to see where things can make the fan experience better, because this isn't art. We don't need to make money on this venture. This is not where we make our money, right? We're a band that plays live music. We make music. We do these things. This is literally something to see if we can make the industry better and have an artist perspective on these new tools, on this new frontier, instead of having someone corporate or a VC do it. Right. That's all this is. There's nowhere that we make money on this. We don't make money on some NFT resale of a Ticketmaster thing or whatever. We make 5% on a token? That's $300. Add that up. It's pennies, right? And so at the end of the day, we're just in a different boat than a lot of people that are just trying to make a platform to sell or to make a bunch of money and have VCs kind of dictate where it goes. It's a different thing for us.
Mm-hmm. I think it's obviously intuitive for me and probably for my audience that really what you're describing is putting the fan and the artist at the center of the experience of all of this more than they currently are. And you're bringing all of these disparate pieces together into your own owned ecosystem. And you're doing all these things also to make things better for the fans. And all of that is lovely. But it fundamentally has to be also kind of fixing a problem. You're describing, this will make Spotify a little bit better. That there's not really a problem with that core experience. How do we just enhance that core experience? This gets us to this question of why is ticketing right now such a miserable experience for so many people? And we were getting at this earlier, right? You're starting and you're saying it's fundamentally just supply and demand. So in a case of the Taylor Swift debacle, which has gotten lots of attention in the mainstream, obviously at the very core, the problem there was that she is such a mega sellout artist that even though she's playing in stadiums that can fit 50,000 people, there's 80,000 people who want to attend that show. Is that the first core problem that at the core of it, that's the problem?
At the core of it, yeah. She's one person and she can only play so many shows. And you also have a feeding frenzy of when a show is known to sell out, you're going to have even more interest on people that can make a buck off it, right?
Got it.
So you have people who flip carbon emissions. You have people who flip homes. You have people who flip anything that you can make money on, right? When you have another version of that with NFTs or whatever. So it would make sense that professionals that can use bots and can kind of get around the system, and even fans, right? The bot number is not that high. A lot of times it's fans that just know, oh my God, I got a ticket. I can make a shit ton of money off this. And that is that's a situation that people run into. But to go back to it, it is a fundamental problem of there's one Taylor Swift and there's not enough. And so this feeding frenzy, what I wanted to get to is if you go to a Taylor Swift show the day of the show and you're willing to sit up higher, whatever it is, you can probably get tickets for under face value. And this was proven by a guy named Bob Lefsetz, who is writing about this all the time. It's really the feeding frenzy and the sort of like, this is going to sell out. So now all these people that aren't fans and so you've got this situation that kind of, piles on itself in a way that makes it even worse, right? It's not just Taylor Swift fans trying to get tickets. It's everybody, because the society and the kind of culture we live in.
But then you seem to have this extra, maybe it was in the process of trying to solve for this. Like, I didn't actually do it. My friend, I'm going to a Taylor Swift concert this year, right? And my friend was the one who waited in line for like 5 hours, in some queue while she's at work, trying to wait for the queue to tell her that this is the city she's allowed to buy the ticket in, and then you have mismatch of some people who had been on the pre-registration, but then never got the text to tell them that it was time to queue up to actually get your ticket. And is all of that mess is fundamentally just like this is just the scale at which you're thousands of people are trying to get on the website at the same time. Like what is at the core of that problem of just the dysfunctional fan experience that transpired, I guess, in service of trying to solve the supply demand issue?
Yeah. Well, another thing that she did that people have talked about, one of the major issues is she wanted to make it look like a complete blowout. So she put every city on sale at the same time. Now, if she would have broken it up into a few cities at a time, you wouldn't have had that complete meltdown. But it looks a lot better to go whole shows, tours sold out instantly, blah, blah. So there is blame to go around everywhere.
To defend Taylor, she said that she was assured multiple times by Ticketmaster that it could handle the load. Wouldn't that be something like Ticketmaster saying we simply can't handle the requests for 100 cities at once? Is that definitely a Taylor problem?
Maybe not, but we don't know those conversations.
Sure.
Artists also go on Twitter every day and say, we don't pick the prices. That's a Live Nation thing, which is not true. Are you telling me that you get a guarantee and Live Nation's going to go around your manager, around CAA, around all these intermediaries that you have, and they're going to pick the price, and then it's going to be so high that they make 3 times you make, and then you have nothing to say about it? This is all like a dodge, a bait and switch, so that people don't have the artists and protection by Live Nation and Ticketmaster, so that artists don't have to take responsibility for the decisions that we make. Now, if Ticketmaster said they could take on the load and they couldn't, that's a failure on Ticketmaster's part, right? But the reason that was even an ask, and I don't know what tech company in the world could have taken that on, right? If Ticketmaster can't take it on, who's spending all these resources on not going down, it's their money, right? Like when the ticketing goes down, it's their money. So I just think it's a lot of minutia, a lot of dust in the eyes, a lot of mud in the water, a lot of blame to go around because they understand the public is not educated on the whole process of what's going on. And the public is very emotional when it comes to music, and they're always going to side with the artist. Mm-hmm. And so she didn't come out and disown Ticketmaster. She said, they said they could handle it. Like, it's hard. It's just a really hard issue that at some point someone's going to have their heart broken with the answer.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone wants tickets, but you can't get them all.
So I want to ask about this, and then I want to ask about the interesting, you did some stuff with NFTs for your album drop, and we'll kind of close on future looking, like what's next for y'all and Deathbats Club and all this. But on this front, because you were saying earlier, you're like, okay, you guys are doing you're taking one particular approach with blockchain, and part of that is, in terms of the almost like fan verified program that you're doing in terms of, if you listen to Spotify and you buy the merch and everything you're doing with all of that, which I think is really interesting. And it sounded like in part you're tying that to like, that makes sense for you guys for all sorts of reasons, given your scale, your this, your that, et cetera. if you're talking about an artist, and actually in our last conversation, we talked about like Justin Bieber as an example, right? If you're an artist who is, a pop star, right? And so you're talking about like biggest pop stars in the world, your Taylor Swifts, your Justin Biebers, whatever. And one of their problems is supply and demand in these huge stadiums. Like what do you think would be the right blockchain or NFT program for Justin or for Taylor? Do you have a perspective on that?
I would first have to know what they're doing. I assume they have paid fan clubs right now. The thing is, like, artists of that size, they really don't have any problems to think about, right? They don't need to think about, like, people seem to be okay. There's always going to be somebody that's okay with paying $600 a year for a fan club benefit, or, some sort of Patreon thing for middle to mid-tier artists. They're okay with the Ticketmaster thing. Only makes Taylor Swift bigger, especially with how they offboard it off onto Ticketmaster. We broke Ticketmaster's system. They couldn't handle us. We're so big, and it just causes more eyes on that particular artist. At some point, it becomes its own feeding frenzy, right? So I don't know if they really wanted to get tickets in the biggest fans' hands. I think you could implement blockchain. Do I think that's part of their prerogative? Probably not. It's just, it probably is not something that they're like worried about. Right. So I don't know what their approach would be. Now, there are plenty of things where you could say, well, it would be nice if they got a collectible because they went to the show that proved they went to that show. And there is a rewards program. Like American Airlines is big and they have a rewards program. Starbucks is big. They have a rewards program. There's no reason why an artist shouldn't have to do this. But right now, there's so much money in that game for the huge artists that it's almost like
it kind of doesn't matter.
What are we trying to do here?
What's the incentive? It's funny. I went to a Taylor Swift concert in 2017, whatever. It was her Reputation tour. She was a little bit less popular then. It was like when she was sort of out of favor with the mainstream, call it. And they had a verified fan program run through, I think, Ticketmaster. But it was also a total nightmare. Like, I'm not trying to pick on Ticketmaster. Clearly, they've got a lovely team of lovely people. But like, and it was like if I bought merch, but I remember just having to like watch videos. Like, part of the thing was if you watched these like music videos of hers, but you had to watch it obviously through this, through their app essentially, and it was like terrible. And I would do it. I would watch these videos and I would watch them like over and over and over again to like accrue the points for it or whatever, that, something like that. And then still at the end, it like wasn't, and that was supposed to get you advanced options for like buying tickets. And I don't have any sense that I had no visibility into like, where am I in the hierarchy after having taken all these steps? Like, did I actually get something early? Did I actually get a better price? Like, it wasn't clear that I actually got any benefits off of that. So, I know I don't know. That's an example of an artist like that, I guess, sort of doing something like this, but it felt like a total failure to me as a fan. Like, I did not feel like I got any benefits.
I think verified fan, like, think about it. It's coming from Ticketmaster, really, or Spotify or whatever they're teaming up with together to verify that you're a fan. And they're making you do extra things.
Yeah. So it wasn't native to what my routine was at all.
So what TicketPass does is what we want it to do. And of course, people take this the wrong way. We want it to be native to what they're already doing.
Yeah.
We're just tracking the things that you're already doing. Don't go buy 50 t-shirts because you want to get it again.
Right.
The ROI is not good there, right? Just do what you normally do. And we're going to have ways to track you, but it's artist native, right?
Right.
So the difference here is that we're tracking you, not Ticketmaster for one particular thing. We're saying, go to shows, buy t-shirts, which Ticketmaster have nothing to do with. Listen to our music, Ticketmaster has nothing to do with. Listen on Spotify, Ticketmaster has nothing to do with. These are things that kind of arc out on this map board, right? That are really following the fan around what they are already going to be doing, but it's not one company saying, oh, go do this, watch this video, get to the end of this.
On this platform. That was the other thing. It was like a laggy, shitty platform. No offense. Like, there were music videos. Like, I would watch this music video, but I would watch it on YouTube where it's going to like render nicely. Not like this weird laggy thing I'm getting on your weird bespoke site that's sort of been whatever, right? So I love what you're doing there.
But you just uncovered the huge shift there, right? That's the difference between what we're doing, what TicketPass does, and what these other programs do. They're all trying to build the VCs and the companies are trying to build the programs within their platform to get you locked in. Where maybe Avenged Sevenfold's trying to get you locked in, fine, but you're already locked in. You're a fan, right. And you're experiencing us everywhere. So why aren't we tracking everywhere and not just tracking a new program made by somebody? That's the difference.
Okay, let's close on the other cool thing you've done recently with the album. And I know there was an NFT component to what you did when you released the album. And I want to preface this with, when you were on last time, we had a whole long conversation about the industry broadly. And it was more a focus. We were more focused on like, how can blockchain fix the music industry as a whole? I like that in this episode, we kind of dig deep on like ticketing in particular. But you helped me understand this a lot, like in terms of like publishing rights and masters rights and why like money doesn't really get made in streaming. So if you're like buying, you know, a piece of an artist's master's rights, well, guess what? You're probably not making much money on that anyway. So we got into all of that. And one of the things you said was I know you'd had actually a lawsuit, I think, with your label, because you were fighting to be able to get your master's rights. And, you know, that the lawsuit, you ended up having to settle, whatever it was, right? And that moving forward, you had basically one more album you were going to put out with your label, and then you were going independent. So I believe this album is now the final album that you've put out with your label. And moving forward, you're going to be independent. And I just want to understand what the future looks like for y'all. And maybe let's start from the context of, okay, you've put out this album, you did some interesting NFT things around it, and then what does the future look like?
Yeah, so we did an ARG that we created ourselves with our team at BitFlips. And the idea was to incorporate many different versions of AI. A sort of the arc was that a hacker got our record and he was going to leak it. And he started off with a post on Reddit, and everyone kind of downvoted him and said, yeah, right. Then another post.
So people
came
just
on
thought
Reddit.
he was like a stupid fan trying to pretend that he had a leak. They didn't realize it was like part of like a performance piece almost.
No
like,
clue.
Okay, cool, fun. Okay, continue.
And so then we have our own podcast. So we had AI speak in my voice and cancel our upcoming shows. And the AI basically went on our podcast, put it out, and everyone's like, are you kidding me? Like, it's my voice. Like, but it was AI doing it, right? We prompted it to say what we wanted it to. And then it went on Instagram and put the shows were canceled. And then basically this Redditor came back and took credit for doing all that. So now it got everyone's attention, right? Because I quickly went on my own Twitter and said, this isn't true. We're trying to get our accounts back, right? So it sent everyone down this rabbit hole. Now, if you looked at this person's screenshot of making fun of us, there was a tab open called libad5343.net. So people started going to this website, which was a whole blog internet website of rabbit holes that ChatGPT-4 wrote for us. And they were all this disgruntled fan mad at us, and he was going to hack us. So as people started going to this website, they started finding that there was clues to puzzles. There was Sudoku puzzles that opened up seed phrases, which led to wallets with ETH in them, which led to real world places. And people were going out to venues and finding clues and QR codes. And then eventually it led you, after a week of these crazy things that all of a sudden became like, okay, this is not normal. Something crazy is going on here. Mm-hmm. It led you to a free mint on Polygon, and all the clues were based on these NFTs you were getting and putting them in the correct order that represented the songs. And once everyone got all that, this is 2 weeks of insane digging, I think we minted almost 1 million NFTs, 1 million NFTs on Polygon.
Did it get botted? That has to be bots part of that, no?
It was all fans because it was free and you can get as many as you wanted, and they all wanted the rare ones, and so it was on Polygon, right? So people were minting for, fractions of a cent. And they were getting all these things that some were very rare and some were clues. And so they were all working together. I think it got up to 900,000 NFTs. So you could look at it. It's libad5.
And how many people in total were participating in this? And
so on the NFT front, it was like a couple thousand. Mm-hmm. But on the actual thing before that, it was a lot more. So a part of this was getting us to onboard people, and they were all in there going, well, how do I get a wallet? But there was, I think it was like something like 25,000 unique people in the scavenger hunt before the NFTs. Now NFTs cut it down a lot, right? So a lot of people decided, I'm just going to watch from the sideline here, right? And see what you guys figure. I don't get this. I don't understand what's happening. But at the end, they basically were able to put together this major clue that unlocked the first single. So the fans felt like they unlocked this thing and it was being leaked to them by this LIBAD guy, which is actually an acronym for the name of the record, Life is But a Dream. And so we were just trying to figure out ways to use Web 2, Web 3, and AI to basically make an overarching point, which was this stuff's coming. You're not going to know what's real.
Yes.
Do your own research, figure out what's happening here. And we did it in a really safe way so people could participate in Web 3 and have, the safety of doing it in like an ecosystem with us. But it was just kind of like a warning of like, hey, this stuff's coming and it's going to be crazy. And you guys have known us for 20 years and my voice still tricked all of you. And it wasn't even me. Right. And all these blog posts, by the way, ChatGPT-4 wrote them all and you all thought it was a real person. So that was kind
crazy.
of,
that's really cool. Yeah. That's so fun. Were people like excited? Like, were they super into it after they found out once they kind of realized the whole thing? Were they like, this is both terrifying and also very cool? Or was there anybody that was like, fuck this?
Well, they kind of put things together when they knew that they were allowed to talk about it in our Discord. They're like, okay, the band wouldn't.
Is encouraging this.
Yeah, they wouldn't let this go on if this was like fake. So this is awesome. Yeah. This is really awesome. But at the same time, there was still those people going, are we sure this is the band? Even like 2 weeks in, they're like, this is kind of crazy if this is the band, but it's also even crazier if this is not the band.
Right.
So it was, there was, we were just messing with people's emotions and it was kind of fun.
That's fun. I realized, so I wanted to ask about what's next, but I realized I also just wanted to quickly make a note on the royalties piece, because this is something the last time you were here, we were talking a lot about, or I think it was more me than you, that honestly, like, that was one of the things that felt so exciting to me was like the royalty piece of the ticketing and NFT ticketing. And then of course, royalties like totally blew up this whole past year. One thing I learned about y'all, which is really interesting to me, is you would have the foresight and sort of, you would, even though you're an older project, you would actually had the ability within your contract to block certain marketplaces. I don't know if that was in anticipation of maybe there being a royalty problem or what, but you had that dynamism within the smart contract, which I think is really interesting for an early project like yours. And you ultimately ended up blocking everyone but Coinbase NFT. Is that right?
Yeah. So early on in the project, one day I went to Joe at BitFlips, my buddy, I've grown up with him. And I said, hey, how does this, because I was asking why we sign so much stuff when we're buying something and why, and is it scary that we're signing over, the ability for OpenSea to have, I was like, what if OpenSea gets hacked? Can whoever hacks OpenSea take my NFTs? And he's like, well, that's why they kind of lock it down to a particular collection, but essentially, yeah. And I'm like, well, so how does the royalty thing work? And he's like, well, you're basically giving them the ability to have access to your collection and then they send you the royalty. Okay, so it's not something that just happens.
Right, it's not actually at the smart contract level.
Yeah, and he's like, no. And this was like, a year, 18 months ago. And I was like, well, what if they decide not to pay us? And he's like, well, you just have to trust that they will. And I said,
like, not why I'm in Web3, folks.
And I said, well, that just sounds like something that could go wrong, right? That sounds like something that doesn't seem like it's something I want to trust. Because what I do know is the one thing I learned about the internet and with the human race and with AI right now as well. When streaming started, once you open that Pandora's box and it's a possibility, it will be the standard, right? Like it just takes a little bit of time and the old school is going to complain and they're going to put their, dig their heels in. But what's going to win out is the technology in the end. And so it was very alarming to me to know that we had no safety net with royalties because we're just trusting some company, right? And so I'm like, so can we make it so that we can block the actual, marketplace if they decide not to? Because I said the dream would be if they did that, then we could block all of them. Then we just make our own marketplace, and the only way you can get our token is through our own marketplace. And he's like, it's not the standard. I've never seen it done. No one's doing that. And I said, well, can you try? And he was like, I'll try to write something, and I think I can figure it out. So after a couple of weeks, he's like, I think I've got something. And I was like, well, can you have Doob and Derb who did the Wicked Craniums? I said, can you have them look at it? So they looked at it and they're like, we don't think it will work because X, Y, and Z. And he's like, well, I think it will work because of, X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C. And then, so they went back and forth. And at the end of it, Doob and Derb were like, actually, I think you're right. I think it might work, but there's no way to really test it until this happens, right? Like there's nothing you can do right now to really put this into beta and try it out. And so we launched with this thing, and all of a sudden we get the news that, everyone's, just as a free for all, and the whole race to the bottom starts happening. And I'm like, dude, should we try this? And he's like, I'm like, how long will it take? He's like 2 seconds. Let me try. So he turns this thing on, and I go try to trade on like Blur or OpenSea or all those ones, and he put them all in on the list. All of a sudden, token does not work. Token's not verified. Token does. And so we run over to NFT Coinbase, and we could easily trade them. And we're like, oh my God, it worked. And so we have the only collection that we can block marketplaces that I know of. Especially from that legacy period.
From
right?
that old,
like
because the newer ones are writing these like new contracts or whatever.
Yeah, so we can block anyone we want, and we've just, as marketplaces go to zero royalties, we just turn them off.
Dude, that is so, it's crazy how prescient that was.
Yeah,
so much
crazy.
credit to you.
And a lot of people, it was so funny watching the NFT community. They're like, well, you just ruined all your liquidity. And it's like, you missed the point already. These are not for you to trade. These are fan club tokens. You think
you're like, I don't care. Yeah. I've never cared about that.
But it's like, you think a fan comes in and they want to go to OpenSea, which I've never heard of, or NFT Coinbase, which I've never heard of. It doesn't matter.
Also, I was like however many days old when I found this out. Is when I found out I thought NFT Coinbase was maybe shutting down. Like, I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't even really know that they were, they were still doing their thing, but they're protecting royalties. And I don't hear anybody talking about that.
Well, I talked to them as well. Listen, and I told them the same thing I told Ticketmaster. We're not partners or buds with anyone, right? I appreciate
we'll play ball with anybody who will play ball.
Anybody who wants to play ball. Like, if OpenSea decided to turn on royalties tomorrow and they were going to guarantee them, then we would just go back. We'd have more marketplaces to work with, right? And I think that's important to keep your options open and work with the people that want to have the same goals and alignment as you do. And so we have a good relationship with Coinbase NFT, but I think it should be sold everywhere as long as they're willing to abide by, a couple things. And, it should be enough for OpenSea to come to us and go, oh, we see that you can turn off other marketplaces yourself. We trust that you can do that. So we're going to turn on your royalties. But they haven't. Instead, they refuted me on Twitter, said I made a tweet that was, not truly factual, and we hit them back with, well, tell us where we're wrong, and then there was nothing. So it's like,
interesting
to me, show me where we're wrong. I went on your site. I could have changed the royalties to zero, and you were allowing it. That's all I need to know. So until you fix that, we're not coming back. And they probably don't care, because they're playing the game to the bottom. They're playing the game where, as much volume as possible, and just like running this NFT thing into the dirt. And it's sad.
Though I will say, this is where it goes back to the point we were making earlier around Ticketmaster, right? Which is like, then you dig in and you're like, you're a business like anybody else, trying to make a living, trying to do your thing. I know a bunch of people at OpenSea. I'm like, people I know are like good people. Everyone's just like kind of trying to do their best.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I think, I think it's really nuanced as well. But I think, listen, maybe that's the Pandora's box that got open, and it's and that's the streaming, right? And that's me. I get that they did put tools in place for newer things, but what do they need those legacy royalties for then right now? Why can't they just turn all those things that made them what they are and just say, okay, moving forward, we give you the tools, but something like Dead Fellas or the Hundreds or, Bored Apes, you're just going to let them just go to just... To me, that's so disrespectful and crazy. Like, there's a certain group of legacy products that made your platform what it is.
I know. Wouldn't the argument be that people won't trade them on us? People will end up going to the zero marketplace. If all the other marketplaces are going to zero, then people just won't trade on OpenSea anymore. And so I think that's the argument. Now, the interesting thing is OpenSea hasn't lost that much. They've lost market share from Blur because Blur created a whole new market, but like, they actually weren't really losing that many users.
Well, I would guess that, I would say as you get far enough away from those legacy products and people are buying things like Nakamoto's or whatever they're buying now, right, that have the new either sort of contracts in place that OpenSea wants. So now you've got control. So now, okay, you want to turn on your royalties, but at least you can turn off the other marketplaces via OpenSea's tool. I think they should go back and open up and put royalties on. And yeah, you could go to Blur in those places and trade it. There's no good answer for the product, but I think out of respect for those products and what built OpenSea, I think it's just really, it would be a nice gesture.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people that default to OpenSea that aren't just traders, day traders. Like if you want a Bored Ape, you might not know what Blur is. If you're a real collector that wants to get in that ecosystem, you might not be that flipper person that cares as much. But you're right. I mean, it's a race to the bottom for sure in that sense.
Yeah, this is where I don't disagree, except that I just don't know anybody's balance sheets or numbers or business models or what they're thinking, in terms of if you're like, we're going to lose all of our revenue is coming from these projects that are all now being traded only on these other platforms, whatever. I think it just sucks. You can't do it at the smart contract level, but credit to you for having put your precautions in place from day one, which is just, again, I don't know of any other project from that era who's done anything like that. Okay, so let's close on looking ahead, both in terms of you guys are now not with your old label, right? Because this was the last album that you had to make.
Well, we are, because our record comes out June 2nd, and then we have a 18-month grace period with them. That's all built in the contracts.
And that 18-month grace period, meaning you stay with them for 18 months? They
work the record for 18 months, and you can't put anything else out.
Okay. But so you're just not. But then presumably, if you put another record out, it'll be. Are you gonna? This is, I guess, what I'm curious. Like, are you staying independent because you're like the music, the old industry is messed up. These contracts don't make any sense. Again, if you're curious about this, go listen to our past episodes. We talked a lot about this. Like these in the world of streaming and everything. Like these labels aren't doing as much as they used to, and they're getting these massive cuts. Like, are you planning on how are you gonna make music? Release music in the future?
Yeah. So basically, we will just. Imagine writing out like a bullet point of things that we're not willing to budge on. And then we will, we want to make music whenever we want, put it out. We want to surprise release things if we want to do this and that. Sometimes artists sign into a label, but it's a distro deal where the label gets 8 to 10% and then they'll distribute the record, but the band takes care of, they might even pay for the record to get done, but the band takes care of other things. So there's so many ways to kind of slice this pie. Mm-hmm. We just know what we're not willing to do. And what we're not willing to do is just sign into the same kind of thing we have going on now. Now, if the next record says Warner Brothers or Universal on it, it doesn't mean that we re-signed with a label. It means that maybe we are using them for distribution. Maybe we're doing a licensing deal. Maybe we don't know what we're going to do.
Right.
Maybe we go to all the streaming services and make our own relationships with them and do our own thing. But at that point, when you're talking about an 8% cut, it's really not, you have to weigh and balance like how much you want to take on, right? Do we want to pay for the record and the publicist and the radio people and all that stuff? Or do we let the label do it and have a much better deal? So one thing I've learned is that don't make decisions a year and a half out. Right now, the record's not out. We have, 18 months to live with them, see how they do on this record. And there's certain things we'll never do again. And there's certain things that I'm going to look at. What we're going to do is just make the best deal we can for where we're at.
Yep. Cool.
So maybe independent, maybe not.
Got it. Love it. And then in terms of the future for Deathbats Club, I mean, we've sort of talked about this already, and NFTs, like you guys are obviously, you've got a lot you're still building out, working on, talks with Spotify, maybe YouTube's in there at some point to watch, if you're watching your stuff on YouTube or listening to your stuff on YouTube, whatever. Is that the main focus right now? Or is there something else that you guys are thinking a lot about when it comes to Deathbats Club?
Well, right now, I think building out that reward system is really vital because, the shows are going to start. We start playing shows and we got to make sure that, things like the fans getting to the front of the line for Deathbats Club and getting in early merch or getting their POAPs dropped to them, making sure the tiered system's working properly. We have like this next 3 or 4 months is going to be really interesting to see how we bring it all together. And then we're going to do little things like we might do a collection of avatars on the sandbox just to do, right? Like, and for our holders, and then maybe sell whatever's left over to people that want to get involved. Hopefully they have some sort of listening party ability, or we can do parties in there there's all these little things that are kind of fun NFT things, but I don't know if they move the needle. But then there's like things like Spotify and the rewards program and things that you don't think of when you inherently think of NFTs that are more of my focus, doing things that are actually useful.
That are big. And to your point, like needle moving in terms of paving the way for other artists and creating systems that other artists can plug into that feel like they have a lot of potential and are quite substantive.
Yeah, and they're things that when you don't instantly think of Web3 when you think of them.
Right.
They're the things that are useful to people and kind of meeting them where they're at instead of what kind of cool DeFi thing can I do for my, like, just.
Right. Well, and the sandbox, I think we're still trying to figure out what does the future of virtual worlds like that in that particular way look like? And, that's a very, in that world of nerdy degen,
100%.
Definitely not mainstream accessible yet. Matt, thank you so much. I really appreciate you're so generous with your time, and you're just doing so much that I'm just really, grateful to have you on and for everything you're doing for the space.
Well, thank you so much. I always love listening to your podcast, and it's an honor to be on twice.
Appreciate it. We'll have you on again anytime.
There we go.
The next time you do the big needle moving thing. All right.
Perfect.
Talk to you
Love
soon. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.